LCTR here, and the Finals might be the hottest title around in FPS gaming today. Innovation in first-person shooters has been thin on the ground for a while, so massive scale destruction and a 3v3v3v3 extraction game mode has arrived like a breath of fresh air. This is a playtest, a beta, so things aren't final, slightly ironically, so you have to imagine some level of polish still to be applied. But I think it's fair to say that the core of what's being showcased already is extremely promising. And don't forget to leave a thumb up or a sub or a comment if you enjoy the video. It really helps me out a bunch, thank you. The gameplay is dominated by the huge sandbox that Embark Studios has created. We're talking destruction like we haven't seen since Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 days. Honestly, I just love the chaos and spectacle that it brings. Much of how you normally play FPSs needs to be reassessed when you learn that the walls, the floor, the ceiling aren't safe. Enemies might not attack you from the normal entryways, so holding that angle on the door might not be the smartest defensive move. And if destruction is a major design pillar for the finals, then movement must also be alongside. Much of the emphasis is placed on moving around these rather beautiful maps in as fluid a manner as possible. There are normal tools like mantling, but also deployables like zip lines, jump pads and grapples. You'll also notice the game seems to favour allowing you to maintain your momentum, so jumping off a zip line and bunny hopping afterwards allows you to speed up your traversal, while also sort of designing in a higher skill ceiling for those players wishing to optimise their skills. I have seen videos of people managing to combine the movement options to get some really quite bizarre speed and height, with some what looks like intended and unintended ways. If I did have a criticism, I'd say that there's a general momentum or feeling of imprecision to the movement sometimes. Like if you spam AD to strafe, it can feel sort of delay in the movement. Maybe not to the level of something designed in momentum like PUBG, but not the super crisp feeling that you might be used to in Shatterline or COD. Even players coming from something like Apex and having expectations of how things normally feel will notice the difference. I don't know if that momentum or imprecision is part of the design choice of how the game feels. You know, as the world is so physicsy, make the player feel part of that sort of thing. Or if this is a byproduct of having a huge number of server-side physics objects, that being all the destructible environment that's actually synced with all the players, it's not just visual eye candy. Well, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. If I had to guess, I guess it's probably the physics load of the server, meaning that some of the movements might not be updated as often. What makes me think that is that sometimes other interactions might not be as immediate as you'd expect either. Maybe a mantle takes slightly longer to trigger, or maybe you feel like the mantle shouldn't trigger as you're too far away, but the game actually lets you do it anyway. None of this is enough to spoil the experience, not by a long way. Of course, this is beta. If this is a feeling that can be tweaked away, then I'd love for the devs to crispen things up as the finals heads towards release. The game mode Cash Out took me a few matches to get into, if I'm honest. 4 teams on the map with 2 initial objectives to retrieve and 2 extraction points means that you're straight away into a competition with others. The team with the most cash extracted wins, so you better defend your own extractions or challenge another to steal your way to victory. The pacing of how this plays out can be quite varied. I've had matches that were complete bedlam from start to finish, and then others where the other 3 enemy teams just chose to slug it out, leaving my experience quite quiet or even uneventful. My friend pointed out that to help that situation, the game might want to tell players when the leading team is currently cashing out, kind of give people a heads up that they should be trying to stop the runaway win by a rival over just trying to cash out themselves. The more I played, the smoother the mode feels, though. That might be me getting better. It's also probably the player base learning the mode too. It's only been a few days after all. Cash Out is certainly interesting. You don't see many 14 modes in FPS games outside large battle royales, but it did make me wonder how a traditional escort or payload style game mode might work in this world that Embark have made. 6v6, 2 teams fighting over a central objective is normally the sort of mode that I prefer in FPS games. And as the final does so much great world building and world destruction, I just really want to see how a mode more similar to the ones I normally love would play out here. And you know me, that I just got shot in the back again feeling that I dislike from general TDM modes does feature a bit in Cash Out, and maybe I'm just trying to remake Dirty Bomb in every FPS game I play, but a single point of focused game mode in this world just sounds like a lot of fun to me. The weapons are also quite a handful if you're coming from COD or the Battlefield direction. The AK bucks and kicks and demands attention and active recoil control if you're going to do decent damage to an opponent. It took me a while to really get my aim dialed in, and I've been playing a bunch of Shatterline recently, and that has way less recoil. The general hit feedback and weapon audio is good. There's a feeling of power and drama to go along with that more pronounced recoil. Quite a bit of muzzle flash too, and that plays to the same feeling. But in the night maps, that can be a little overwhelming. I found myself actually aiming below the enemy health bars rather than at their actual figures, because that was easier to track. There's a slightly odd feeling of having no choices of sights or optics on the weapons. It did feel like less of an issue the more I played, but I think I was making my weapon choices based on how clear the iron sights were as much as anything else. For example, I thought I'd love the M60 machine gun for the heavy class, but there's so much of the screen blocked by the admittedly accurate looking iron sight, I found it difficult to track targets. I got this feeling of fighting the tools I was using as much as I was fighting the enemy players. I'm not a massive fan of the play to unlock upgrade system that many games use. It really does make things more difficult for new players amongst other issues, but perhaps some equaling out of the amount of screen the iron sights cover might improve the current situation if individual sight options aren't on the cards for the finals. The graphics, as you can see from the footage, are pretty uniformly impressive. There's the occasional low-res texture in the intro and winning screens, but pretty much at all other times things look like a modern title in 2023, and the occasional feeling of mirror's edge from the visuals is appreciated. The addition of level variation of day and night maps mixed with weather variants as well helps to keep things fresh. And alongside the materials and shaders, the visual effects are also looking great. The dust and debris from many crumbling buildings, the smoke of explosions, the glow from the fire of Molotov grenades is all top-notch. With the default enabled DLSS active, the performance with decently high settings isn't too bad either. My semi-recent system not showing quite into three figures, but honestly it didn't feel like the performance affected the gameplay much unless I really cranked the settings up. One other factor though, and something that I might actually do a small separate video on, is the actual gameplay implications of RTX ray-traced lighting for the game. I know people are used to thinking ray tracing meaning reflections, but when the system is used for global illumination, and by that just think bounce lighting, it can actually mean a quite large perceivable visual difference for dynamic environments like the destructible nature of the world in the finals. I really don't think I've really seen that in a game before, especially a multiplayer one where, in general, lower settings for more FPS is the favoured option for competitive players. The audio is really well done too. We talked briefly about the weapon audio, but how it interacts with the world around you, the reverberations of all the punch and power, it's all great. I'm happy to say that the directional audio seemed to work well. I don't ever recall having that feeling of poor vertical directional audio especially. Sometimes games, they seem to scale audio fine horizontally, but if you're on the roof and someone's on the street below you, sometimes they sound close to you even though you're actually quite far apart. But yeah, I never found that to be a problem in the finals. The only negatives that stand out for me is that sometimes the player's own footstep audio could sometimes sound like it's coming from a close enemy. It didn't seem to be all the time either. In some locations it seemed to spook me more often. And I guess the announcer voiceover lines felt pretty repetitive and the humour fell pretty flat for me. It was almost annoying at times, but to be honest, just add a slider so people can turn that down and they'll be completely fine. For price and monetization, well, the good news is this will be free to play, so you can check it out without having to put in money down. And as for whether this will have any pay-to-win elements, well, if this beta is representative of the final release, I'm happy to say that there's nothing to indicate that will be an issue. There are the usual suspects of a battle pass and a cosmetic store, so as long as we don't see anything gameplay affecting in the options, then I don't see any massive problems, although I guess we don't really know all the exact pricing for things yet. So the Finals beta playtest, is it worth playing? From the trailer alone, I thought this would be a game I love. The destruction reminded me of the halcyon days of Bad Company 2, where pancaking buildings was the dessert of the day, and hearing that some ex-DICE devs, along with some ex-Splash Damage devs, were in the studio as well, gave me even more hope. I'm happy to say that the experience they've created is something genuinely enjoyable and truly innovative for a game in 2023. The game mode took some getting used to for sure. The intricacies and the meta seem to be lost on much of the player base at the moment, though obviously I'd expect that to improve over time. But it did, as I said, make me wonder about how a payload or escort mode might feel. I would very much like to see the movement crispen up. If that needs more development time, or maybe it's just a bug we're seeing at the moment, then I'd certainly choose to spend the resources to tighten up what we've been playing during this playtest. As it stands, Embark Studios has created a core experience to rival any FPS title of recent memory. The innovation and gameplay central to this are as impressive as they are fun. Yes, it needs some more development time to round over some of those rough edges, but none of them feels so ingrained that it needs a wholesale rethink. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how the final shapes up, and I'm certainly going to be keeping my eye on this one. So what do you think of the finals? Is this the sort of thing you'd try? Have you been trying to get a beta key? Whatever your thoughts, let me know your powerful feelings by leaving a comment below right now. Like always, I'll be reading every single one of them. If you did enjoy this video, please do leave me a thumb up and a sub. If you'd like to watch some of my other videos, perhaps you're wondering how that Shatterline game is, well, I have a video reviewing that too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.